They laughed at the janitor again that night, but no one noticed the woman watching from the shadows would soon be the one left speechless. The laughter came quick, careless, echoing across the polished marble floor of the office lobby just past 9:40 p.m. Marcus Hale didn't look up. "Hey, don't miss a spot this time," one voice called out. "Yeah, the CEO might slip," another added with a smirk. Marcus kept moving the mop in slow, even strokes, the kind that didn't rush and didn't react. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above him, reflecting off the wet floor like a quiet mirror. He wore a simple gray uniform, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal forearms that hinted at a life lived harder than this one. He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because some men don't defend themselves with words. They defend themselves with silence. Across the lobby, unseen behind the tinted glass of the executive corridor, Elena Vaughn stood still. She hadn't meant to stay this late. A delayed board call. A string of decisions no one else could make. But now she stood there, watching a man no one respected handle disrespect like it didn't belong to him. He should say something, one intern whispered. Or at least react. But Marcus didn't. He wrung out the mop. The water dripped slowly, each drop landing with a soft, steady rhythm against the plastic bucket. Then he spoke just once. "Floor's almost dry. You might want to be careful." No anger. No edge. Just calm. The laughter faded a little, not gone, just unsure. Elena tilted her head slightly. That wasn't weakness. That was control. And control, she knew better than anyone, was power in its quietest form. The lobby settled back into an uneasy silence as the others drifted away, their jokes losing shape without resistance. Marcus continued working, steady, deliberate, like a man who had already decided what mattered and what didn't. Outside, the city stretched into the night, streetlights glowing amber against the dark, traffic humming low and distant. Inside, something shifted. Elena stepped forward, her heels clicking once against the tile before she stopped again. She wasn't ready to speak. Not yet. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't the most composed person in the room. Marcus finished the last section of the floor and leaned the mop gently against the wall. He checked his watch. 9:57 p.m. Almost time to go home. Somewhere across town, his daughter would already be asleep, the small nightlight glowing beside her bed, waiting for the quiet sound of the door unlocking. He didn't rush. He never did. Because a man who carries responsibility doesn't move fast. He moves right. And as he reached for his jacket, unaware of the eyes still watching him, the night prepared to unfold something neither of them had planned. A moment where power would step down, humility would rise, and a single question would begin to change everything. If you're enjoying this story, take a second to subscribe. It really helps the channel. Now let's go on. The elevator door slid open with a soft chime at exactly 10:02 p.m., and Marcus Hale stepped inside without looking back, his movements unhurried, his posture steady like a man who carried more than just the weight of a long day. And just as the doors were about to close, a sharp voice echoed down the hallway, "Hold that, please." He reached out instinctively, pressing the button, and the doors parted again to reveal Elena Vaughn, her expression composed but her steps slightly slower than before. "Thank you," she said, her tone measured, controlled, the kind of voice that usually commanded rooms without needing to rise. Marcus nodded once. "You are welcome." The elevator began its descent, quiet except for the low hum of cables and the faint echo of heels against the polished floor. Elena stood a few feet away, arms crossed lightly, her reflection flickering in the brushed steel walls. "You stayed late," she said. Marcus kept his eyes forward. Work was not finished. A pause followed, thin but noticeable. "Most people would have left," she added. "Most people do," he replied simply. The silence returned, but this time it carried something different, something heavier, like a question forming before it had words. The elevator reached the lobby level, and the doors opened into the cool night air spilling faintly through the glass. Entrance. Marcus stepped out first, holding the door again without thinking. Elena followed, her gaze shifting briefly toward him, studying, measuring. Outside, the city stretched wide under a deep navy sky, streetlights casting long golden lines across the pavement, the air carrying that late-night stillness where everything felt slower, quieter, more honest. Elena walked toward the curb, her heels clicking softly, then stopped. Her car was not there. No driver. No assistant. Just an empty space where certainty should have been. That is strange, she murmured almost to herself. Marcus glanced once, then away. Everything all right? He asked, not stepping closer, not intruding. She hesitated just for a second. My driver must have left. There was a schedule change. She reached for her phone, tapped the screen, then frowned slightly. No signal. The building's exterior construction had been interfering all week. Of course, she exhaled quietly. 3 seconds passed. Then 5. The city moved on around them, cars passing, distant horns echoing, but right there, in that small pocket of night, something paused. Marcus shifted his weight slightly. I can wait with you, he said, until you get a ride. Elena looked at him, really looked this time, as if seeing past the uniform, past the assumptions. You do not have to do that, she replied. I know, he said calmly. Another pause. The kind that reveals more than conversation ever could. A cold breeze moved through the street, brushing against her arms, and without a word, Marcus removed his jacket and held it out. Not insistently, not dramatically, just there. Elena blinked, caught off guard by the gesture, by its simplicity. It is fine, she said at first. I am used to it. Marcus did not pull the jacket back. It is not about what you are used to, he answered quietly. It is about not being cold. She hesitated, then took it. The fabric was warm, worn, real. Not designer. Not polished. Just honest. And for a brief moment, standing under those dim city lights, Elena Vaughn, a woman who owned entire buildings, entire companies, felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not control. Not strategy. Something quieter. Something she had not expected to find in a man everyone else had already dismissed. The ride arrived 12 minutes later, not a sleek executive car but a simple sedan summoned through a delayed connection, its headlights cutting softly through the quiet street as it pulled to the curb, and for a moment neither of them moved. That should be yours, Marcus said, stepping slightly back, giving space the way he always did. Elena nodded, but her hand did not reach for the door. Where are you headed? She asked instead. Marcus hesitated just long enough to notice it. North side. About 20 minutes from here. She glanced at the empty street, then back at him. Have you eaten? The question came out differently than she intended, less like a command and more like something uncertain. Marcus shook his head once. I will manage. A pause settled between them again, soft but persistent. Then she made a decision she did not fully explain, even to herself. Get in, she said. Marcus frowned slightly. You do not have to. I know, she replied, opening the rear door. But I am not asking. He studied her for a second, not challenging, not impressed, just measuring something deeper. Then he nodded once and stepped in. The car door closed with a muted thud, sealing them inside a small, dimly lit space that felt separate from the rest of the world. The driver glanced back briefly through the mirror, then pulled away from the curb, merging into the slow rhythm of late-night traffic. For the first few minutes neither spoke. The city moved past them in reflections of glass and steel, neon signs flickering, storefronts closing, distant sirens humming low like a reminder that life never fully stopped. Elena sat with her hands folded in her lap, Marcus's jacket still around her shoulders, the fabric carrying a faint scent of detergent and something warmer, something grounded. She was not used to silence like this. Usually silence meant strategy, tension, anticipation. But this was different. This silence did not demand anything. Simply existed. You could have ignored them, she said finally, her voice quieter now. Marcus looked out the window. Ignored who? The ones earlier. The comments. He exhaled lightly. I did. She turned slightly toward him. No, you endured it. Marcus shook his head. Enduring means carrying it with you. I do not. 3 short sentences. Calm. Clear. Final. Elena looked at him, studying the way he spoke, the absence of bitterness, the absence of performance. 2 seconds passed. Then 3. The car slowed at a red light, the glow casting a soft amber across their faces. Outside, a couple crossed the street, laughing, unaware of anything beyond their moment. Inside, something shifted again. Most people would want something, she said, almost to herself. Recognition. Compensation. At least an apology. Marcus turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze for the first time since they got in. Most people are tired, he said. Tired people ask for things that do not fix what is broken. The light turned green. The car moved forward. Elena leaned back against the seat, her mind tracing his words, trying to place them, trying to understand why they felt heavier than they should. She had spent years negotiating billion-dollar decisions, reading people in seconds, controlling outcomes before they formed. But this man, sitting beside her in quiet certainty, was not trying to win anything. He was not trying at all. And somehow that made him impossible to ignore. The city thinned as they drove farther north, the buildings giving way to quieter streets, smaller houses, softer lights glowing behind drawn curtains. "You live around here?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "A few blocks ahead." Another pause. Then she spoke again, slower this time. "Why did you stay tonight?" He did not answer immediately. The car turned onto a narrow street lined with trees swaying gently in the night breeze. "Because work was not finished," he said. Simple. Direct. But something in his tone suggested it meant more than floors and mops. Elena felt it. That quiet weight behind ordinary words. And as the car rolled to a stop near a modest house with a single porch light left on, she realized something she had not expected when the night began. She was not ready for this conversation to end. The engine idled. Softly as the car came to a complete stop, the quiet hum settling into the stillness of the neighborhood, and Marcus reached for the door handle but did not open it right away. "This is me," he said, his voice steady, as if endings were something he accepted without needing to stretch them. Elena looked past him through the window, taking in the small house with its worn wooden steps, the single porch light glowing warm against the darkness, the kind of place that did not pretend to be more than it was. "It is peaceful," she said, almost surprised by her own words. Marcus gave a slight nod. "It is enough." 3 simple words. No apology. No explanation. Just truth. He opened the door then, stepping out into the cool night air, and the faint sound of crickets filled the silence where the city noise had once been. Elena remained seated for a second longer than expected. Then 2. Something in her resisted the moment ending so cleanly. She stepped out as well. "You forgot this," she said, gently pulling the jacket from her shoulders and holding it toward him. Marcus looked at it, then at her. "You can keep it until you get inside," he said. "It is colder out here." She paused, caught again by that quiet instinct he carried, the kind that did not perform kindness but simply lived it. "You do this often?" she asked. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Do what?" "Take care of people who do not belong in your world." He considered the question, not defensive, not flattered, just thoughtful. "Everyone belongs somewhere," he replied. "Sometimes they just forget where." 2 sentences. Calm. Measured. The kind that did not argue but stayed. Elena felt that again, that unfamiliar shift inside her, like something steady pressing against years of practiced control. A soft light flickered inside the house as a curtain moved slightly. Marcus glanced toward the window. "My daughter is awake," he said quietly. "She waits up sometimes." Elena followed his gaze. "How old is she?" 8. His voice softened, almost imperceptibly, like a man who carried strength everywhere except in the one place he did not need to. "Does she know what you do?" Elena asked. Marcus smiled faintly. "She knows I come home." A pause settled between them, deeper this time, filled with something neither of them named. The porch light buzzed softly above them, casting long shadows across the narrow walkway. Elena shifted slightly, the jacket still in her hands now, forgotten. "You did not ask me anything," she said. Marcus looked back at her. "About what?" "About who I am. What I do. Why I was there tonight." He held her gaze for a moment, steady and unhurried. "You would have told me if it mattered," he said. 3 sentences. No judgment. No curiosity forced into performance. Just acceptance. Elena let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. In her world, everyone asked questions. Everyone wanted something. Information. Advantage. Control. But here, standing under a quiet porch light in a neighborhood far removed from glass towers and boardrooms, she felt something else entirely. Something simpler. Something real. Marcus, she said, his name slower now as if it carried weight. Do you ever think about more? He frowned slightly, not confused, just careful. More what? She pressed gently. More than this. A different life. Something bigger. He looked toward the house again, toward the faint silhouette moving behind the curtain. 2 seconds passed. Then 3. The night air settled around them like a held breath. Bigger does not always mean better, he said finally. It just means louder. And for the first time that night, Elena Vaughn had no answer. Elena did not move right away, her fingers tightening slightly around the fabric of the jacket as if letting go of it meant letting go of something she had not yet fully understood. And for a moment the night seemed to hold its breath between them. You make it sound simple, she said quietly. Marcus shook his head once. It is not simple. It is just clear. 3 words. Then silence. The kind that does not need to be filled. A faint sound came from inside the house, the soft creak of a floorboard followed by a small voice, distant but unmistakable. Dad. Marcus turned immediately, his entire posture shifting in a way Elena had not seen before, something softer, something grounded deeper than anything he had shown in the office. I am here, he called back, his voice calm but warmer now. The front door opened a few inches and a small girl stood there, her hair slightly messy from sleep, holding onto the edge of the doorframe as if the night itself was something she needed permission to step into. You are late, she said, not complaining, just stating what was true. Marcus walked toward her, each step steady, unhurried. I had work to finish, he replied gently. She looked past him then, her eyes landing on Elena, curiosity flickering without fear. Who is she? Marcus paused just for a second. Someone who needed help getting home, he said. The girl nodded slowly, accepting the answer without question. The way children sometimes understand things adults complicate. Elena stood a few feet away, watching, feeling something unfamiliar settle deeper inside her chest. Something that had nothing to do with business or control or outcomes. Hi, the girl said softly, offering a small wave. Hi, Elena replied, her voice quieter than usual, almost careful. The porch light cast a gentle glow over the scene, the edges of the moment soft, unguarded. You should come inside, the girl added, looking at Marcus as if the decision was already made. Marcus smiled faintly. It is late, he said. Maybe another time. The girl studied him, then Elena, then nodded again, satisfied in a way that did not need explanation. She stepped back inside, leaving the door slightly open, a warm line of light stretching across the porch like an invitation that did not insist. Marcus turned back to Elena. She waits up when she hears the clock pass 10, he said. She likes to know I made it back. Elena glanced toward the doorway, then back at him. You never told me what happened, she said slowly. Marcus raised an eyebrow slightly. What do you mean? Your life, she clarified. You do not speak like someone who has always had things easy. He let out a quiet breath. Not heavy, not defensive, just present. It was not easy, he said. Then he stopped. No long explanation. No story poured out. Just that. Elena frowned slightly. That is all. He nodded once. That is enough. 3 words again. Simple. Complete. The night air moved gently between them, carrying the faint scent of grass and distant rain. Elena felt something shift again, a quiet realization pressing against everything she had built her world on. She had spent years asking questions that demanded answers, expecting details, expecting explanations, expecting control. But Marcus did not offer those things. He offered something else. Something steadier. You do not explain yourself, she said. Not unless it changes something, he replied. 2 sentences. Calm. Unshaken. Elena looked at him for a long moment, her mind tracing every word, every pause, every silence he allowed to exist without filling it. And for the first time in a very long time she realized something she could not measure, could not predict, could not control. She was not trying to understand him anymore. She was trying to understand herself. Standing in front of a man who needed nothing from her, and yet somehow made everything she had feel incomplete. Elena did not leave when she should have, and that was the first decision that truly unsettled her, because she had built a life on knowing exactly when to walk away, Exactly when to close the door, exactly when to end a conversation before it began to matter. Marcus, she said again, slower this time, as if the name itself required more weight now. Why are you like this? He looked at her, not confused, not defensive, just waiting. Like what? He asked. Calm, she replied. Unmoved. You do not react. You do not ask for anything. You do not even seem affected. 3 observations. Quick. Direct. The kind she used in boardrooms to dismantle arguments. But this was different. Marcus did not answer immediately. He glanced once toward the open door where the soft light still stretched across the porch, then back at her. I am affected, he said quietly. I just choose what deserves a response. 2 sentences. Simple. Final. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. Not pressure, not discomfort, something closer to recognition she had avoided for years. And what deserves a response? She pressed. Marcus held her gaze for a moment, steady, unhurried. People who stay, he said. 3 words. Then silence. The night settled around them again. Deeper now, like the space between questions and answers had become something else entirely. Elena looked away for the first time, her eyes drifting toward the quiet street, the dim glow of distant houses, the absence of noise she was not used to. In her world, everything demanded attention. Emails, calls, decisions, expectations. Nothing ever simply existed without purpose. But here, nothing was asking anything from her. And that was exactly what made it impossible to ignore. You think I do not stay? She asked, her voice softer now, less certain. Marcus did not rush to answer. He took a breath, slow and even. You stay where you are needed, he said. Not where you are known. 2 sentences. And then one more, quieter. There is a difference. Elena turned back to him, her expression shifting, not defensive, not offended, just exposed. 3 seconds passed. Then 5. The porch light flickered once above them, a soft hum filling the silence. What do you want, Marcus? She asked suddenly, the question sharper than she intended, but honest in a way she rarely allowed. From life. From people. From all of this. Marcus looked at her, really looked this time, not at the CEO, not at the title, just at the person standing in front of him trying to understand something she had never needed before. He did not answer right away. The air felt still. The kind of stillness that comes before something changes. Nothing, he said at first. Elena frowned slightly. That is not true. Marcus shook his head gently. It is not complicated. Then he added, his voice calm but unmistakably clear. I want peace. And I want respect. 3 words. Then 3 more. No hesitation. No adjustment. Just truth. Elena felt it land, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, like something settling into place she had never thought to question. She had spent years chasing more. More growth. More influence. More control. But standing there under a quiet porch light, listening to a man who asked for nothing beyond peace and respect, she realized something she could not ignore anymore. She had everything except the one thing he refused to live without. Elena did not speak after that, not because she did not have words, but because for the first time in years, words felt smaller than what she was beginning to understand, and that realization unsettled her more than any negotiation ever had. The night stretched quietly around them, the distant hum of a passing car fading into nothing, the porch light above casting a steady glow that did not flicker anymore. Peace and respect, she repeated softly, almost as if testing the weight of the words. Marcus did not respond. He did not need to, because some truths do not require confirmation once they are heard. She looked down at her hands, still holding his jacket, her fingers tracing the worn fabric unconsciously, as if grounding herself in something real, something not designed, not curated, not controlled. Do you know what I have? She asked after a moment, her voice quieter now, stripped of its usual certainty. Marcus tilted his head slightly. You have a lot, he said. That is not what I asked, she replied, a faint edge slipping in before she caught it. He nodded once. Then tell me. 3 words. Calm. Open. Elena exhaled slowly, her shoulders lowering just enough to show the weight she carried. I have buildings, she said. Contracts. Teams. People who listen when I speak. She paused. I have influence. Another pause. Then one more sentence softer. But I do not have what you just described. 3 statements. Then truth. The kind she did not say out loud. Marcus watched her, not with pity, not with surprise, just with a quiet understanding that did not make her feel smaller. It is not something you collect, he said. It is something you allow. 2 sentences. Simple. Elena frowned slightly. Allow. He nodded. Peace comes when you stop proving. Respect comes when you stop trading. 3 phrases. No explanation. And somehow that made them heavier. Elena looked at him, her mind moving through every deal she had made, every room she had controlled, every moment she had chosen strategy over stillness. 2 seconds passed. Then 5. The realization did not come like a shock. Came like a slow unfolding. So you think I am trading? She asked carefully. Marcus did not answer immediately. He glanced once toward the quiet house, then back at her. I think you have been surrounded by people who expect something from you, he said. So you learn to expect something back. 2 sentences. Balanced. Fair. Elena let out a breath that almost sounded like a quiet laugh, but there was no humor in it. That is how the world works, she said. It is how your world works, Marcus replied. 1 sentence. 1 difference. And it landed deeper than anything else he had said. The silence that followed was not empty anymore. It was full. Full of everything she had not questioned. Full of everything she had accepted without thinking. The porch door creaked slightly behind him. A small reminder that life inside that house continued without needing to prove anything to anyone. Elena looked past Marcus for a moment, then back at him, her expression no longer guarded, no longer measured, just present. And your world, she asked. How does it work? Marcus held her gaze steady, grounded, unchanged. It works when people show up, he said. And when they do not, it still keeps going. 2 sentences. Quiet. Certain. Elena felt it again, that shift, deeper now, not just curiosity, not just interest, something closer to respect she had not planned to give. She straightened slightly, the instinct to regain control returning, but weaker this time, less convincing. You make it sound like I have been doing everything wrong, she said. Marcus shook his head gently. No, he replied. Just differently. 1 pause. Then 1 final sentence. And sometimes different costs more than it should. And for the first time that night, Elena Vaughn had nothing to counter with, nothing to negotiate, nothing to reframe, only the quiet, undeniable feeling that the man standing in front of her, in a place far removed from everything she owned, had just shown her something she could not buy and could not ignore. Elena did not realize how long she had been standing there until the night air grew colder, and the silence between them became something she could no longer pretend was ordinary. And for the first time in years, she did not want to leave simply because the conversation had reached its natural end. I should go, she said finally, but her voice lacked the certainty it usually carried. Marcus nodded once. You should, he agreed, not holding her there, not asking her to stay. That was the difference. He never tried to keep anything that was not already choosing to remain. Elena looked at him, searching for something more, something unspoken. But there was nothing hidden in his expression. Just quiet presence. Just dignity that did not perform. You are not curious, she asked suddenly, about what happens next. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Next does not belong to me, he said. It belongs to what you decide. 3 sentences. Then silence. Elena felt that again, that unfamiliar absence of pressure, the absence of expectation, and it unsettled her more than any demand ever had. In her world, everything came with a follow-up. Condition. A strategy. But here, standing under a single porch light in a quiet neighborhood, she was being given something she had never been offered before. A choice that was not tied to anything. A moment that did not need to be leveraged. She glanced down at the jacket still in her hands, then slowly held it out toward him. Thank you, she said, and this time the words were not polite, not automatic, they were intentional. Marcus took the jacket, his fingers brushing the fabric once before folding it over his arm. You are welcome, he replied. Simple. Complete. No extension. No expectation. Elena hesitated, then took a small step back toward the waiting car. its engine still running softly at the curb, the driver pretending not to watch. "Marcus," she said again. He looked at her. "Yes." She paused, her mind moving through everything she could say, everything she was used to saying, every version of control she could reach for, and then she stopped. Because none of it fit here. None of it belonged in this moment. "Nothing," she said finally, almost surprised by herself. Marcus nodded once, as if that answer made more sense than anything else she could have chosen. 3 seconds passed. Then 5. The night held steady around them, the quiet stretching just long enough to feel complete. Elena turned and walked toward the car, her heels softer now against the pavement, the sound no longer sharp, no longer commanding. She opened the door, then paused again, her hand resting against the frame as she looked back one last time. Marcus had already stepped toward his house, the door opening wider now as the small figure inside moved closer, waiting, trusting, certain. He did not look back. He did not need to. Because some people do not wait to see if they are being watched. They simply go where they are needed. Elena slid into the car slowly, the door closing with a quiet click that felt louder than it should have. The driver pulled away from the curb, the house fading behind them, the porch light growing smaller in the distance until it became just another point of warmth in a city full of cold decisions. She leaned back into the seat, her eyes fixed on the window as the reflection of her own face stared back at her. But it looked different now, not weaker, not uncertain, just aware. The buildings grew taller again as they moved closer to the center of the city, glass towers rising into the night like symbols of everything she had built, everything she controlled, everything she had once believed defined her. But something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, deeply. And as the car disappeared into the rhythm of the city, Elena Vaughn realized something she could not ignore anymore. She had just walked away from a man who did not need her power, did not seek her approval, did not ask for her world. And somehow that made her want to understand his more than anything she had ever owned. The next morning arrived without announcement, just a pale gray light stretching across the glass walls of the executive floor as employees moved through their routines with quiet urgency, unaware that something subtle had already begun to change before the day had even started. At exactly 8:15 a.m., the elevator doors opened, and Elena Vaughn stepped out, her posture the same, her pace the same, her presence still commanding the space without a single word, but something in her gaze had shifted, something quieter, something that no one could name but everyone would soon feel. "Good morning, Ms. Vaughn," one assistant said quickly. Elena nodded. "Good morning." 3 words. Calm, measured, but softer. She walked past the rows of offices, past the glass conference rooms, past the people who straightened as she passed, and for the first time in a long time she was not scanning for efficiency, not calculating outcomes, not anticipating resistance. She was observing. 2 steps slower. 2 breaths deeper. The floor buzzed faintly with the sound of keyboards and muted conversations, the rhythm of a world built on speed and expectation. And then she saw him. Marcus Hale stood near the far end of the corridor, a cart beside him, his hand steady as he wiped down a surface with the same quiet precision he had carried the night before. Nothing about him had changed. Not his posture. Not his pace. Not his presence. Because men like him do not wake up different just because the world shifts around them. They remain. "Marcus," she said. The room stilled. 3 voices stopped mid-sentence. 2 people turned. One dropped a pen. He looked up, meeting her gaze without hesitation, without surprise. "Yes," he replied. 1 word. "Enough." Elena walked toward him, her heels echoing softly against the polished floor. But this time the sound did not carry authority. It carried intention. "I would like a moment of your time," she said. Formal. Clear. But different. Marcus nodded once. "Of course." No question. No assumption. Just agreement. They stood there, not in a conference room, not behind closed doors, but in the open space where everyone could see, where everyone could hear if they chose to listen. Elena paused just briefly, the kind of pause that in her world would signal calculation, but here it meant something else. It meant honesty. "Last night," she began, her voice steady, "you said something that stayed with me." 3 sentences. Simple. Direct. The kind that do not perform. Marcus did not interrupt. He waited. Because some conversations are not meant to be led. They are meant to unfold. Elena took a breath. You said you wanted peace. She continued. And respect. Another pause. The room grew quieter, the subtle shift spreading like a ripple no one could ignore. I realized, she said, her voice lowering slightly, that I have asked for performance but not always offered respect. One sentence. One truth. And it landed. The kind that does not echo loudly but settles deeply. Marcus held her gaze steady, unchanged. Respect is not something you say, he replied. It is something you show. 3 sentences. Calm. Final. Elena nodded slowly. Then I will show it, she said. No elaboration. No explanation. Just a decision. She turned slightly, her gaze lifting to the room around them, to the employees who had watched, who had heard, who now stood in a silence that felt different from any before. Starting today, she said clearly, everyone in this building is treated with the same level of respect, regardless of title. 3 sentences. Then one more. That includes you. And in that moment something shifted. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Quietly. Completely. Marcus did not react the way others might have expected. He did not smile. He did not thank her. He simply nodded once, acknowledging what had been said without needing to hold on to it. Because real dignity does not celebrate recognition. It accepts it, and remains unchanged. The room stayed silent. Not out of confusion. Not out of fear. But because for the first time respect was not being demanded, it was being understood. And in that silence something rare happened. Not power. Not control. Something better. Something quieter. Something real. In this collection of touching stories, a humble single dad crosses paths with a powerful female CEO, leading to a quiet yet life-changing connection built on dignity, respect, and emotional truth. Through a simple act of kindness, touching stories unfold as 2 completely different worlds collide in a late-night encounter that reveals the strength of character over status. As the single dad remains grounded in grace and calm, the female CEO begins to question everything she thought defined success, making these touching stories resonate deeply with anyone who believes in second chances and authentic human connection. What begins as a small moment grows into one of those rare touching stories where silence speaks louder than power, and where respect becomes the true currency of change. This is one of those unforgettable touching stories that reminds us that real transformation does not come from control, but from understanding what truly matters in life. If this story meant something to you, stay with us and subscribe for more stories like this.